Nobody in Halvern Watch expected me to be useful. That was the arrangement, as far as they understood it. 7 years ago, the Kesh Dominion and the Reach signed a border accord neither side trusted, and one clause of it, buried under trade tariffs and mineral rights, required a human liaison to be married into the ruling house as a gesture of goodwill. I was not chosen for skill or rank. I was chosen because I was already out here, already retired from field engineering, and already unlikely to cause an incident. Queen Illith Sorn did not choose me at all. She was handed me, the way you're handed a treaty document you didn't draft, and can't refuse to sign. She made her opinion of the arrangement clear the first week, in the receiving hall with its tall windows and cold morning light, in front of her general staff. He repairs pipe fittings, she told them, not looking at me, her voice flat and carrying. A soft-handed human toy, the Reach sent us instead of an army. Her officers laughed, the polite kind of laugh that isn't really about you at all. I didn't argue. There wasn't anything to argue with. I did repair pipe fittings, and there is no dignity you can perform your way into with people who've already decided what you are. So I kept my head down, learned the Garrison's grid by hand, and let them forget I existed. Illith mostly managed that without trying. She was composed in the way queens are trained to be composed, sapphire eyes that gave away nothing, lavender hair bound back for duty, ivory pale skin that never seemed to flush with anything as ordinary as anger. She spoke to me twice a week, about matters of state, in the tone you'd use with a courier. I told myself that was fine. I hadn't married her for warmth. I'd married her for a border that needed to hold. I found my own place in Halvern Watch, the kind a man finds when nobody's watching closely enough to stop it. The relay techs let me shadow them, because I asked useful questions, and never tried to give an order. The cooks let me sit at the end of their table because I fixed the mess hall's failing heat coil unasked, the way I used to fix things on postings where nobody had a name for me either. I learned every soldier's name in that courtyard, though most never learned mine. I was just the Queen's human, said the way you'd say the weather. A man can build a whole quiet life out of being underestimated, if he's patient enough, and I had nothing but patience by then. It held for 3 years. Then the Ashmark raiders came at dawn, out of the low sun, where the watchtowers couldn't see them, and put 6 charges into the grid relay, before the alarms finished cycling. I was in the courtyard when the lights went white, and then nothing. The shield failed in sections, a slow collapse you could watch spread across the sky like ice cracking on a lake, and through the gap, the raiders' skiffs came down onto the muster field, firing on anything that moved. Illith's soldiers, real soldiers, trained for this, were pinned in the barracks trench, cut off from the relay station by open ground. The skiffs were raking back and forth. I heard her general shouting for a weapons crew that didn't exist yet, because the armory access ran through the same relay that was now a smoking box no one could reach. Nobody looked at me. Why would they? I wasn't the kind of person you looked at when the shooting started. I heard the general call for a weapons crew twice more, his voice cracking on the second call, and I understood before he did that no crew was coming, because the armory door ran on the same dead circuit as everything else. He was asking for a solution that physically could not exist for another 10 minutes, and in 10 minutes, the trench line would be gone. But I knew that relay. I'd rebuilt half of it myself over 3 years of nobody watching, because idle hands and quiet postings do that to a man. So I went, low and fast across open ground that the general would have told me, correctly, no soldier should cross unarmed. And I got into the housing while the skiffs were turned toward the trench line, and I put my bare hands into a system that was still live enough to burn me, and I did the only thing I have ever been good at. I fixed it. It wasn't fast, it wasn't clean. My hands were shaking and bleeding by the second minute, and twice I heard fire chew through the wall a few feet from where I knelt, and the whole time some very calm, very tired part of my mind was running diagnostics the way it had for 20 years, on ships nobody remembered the names of. Grid systems don't care who you are, they care whether you know them. I knew this one. I'd traced its wiring on quiet afternoons when nobody had a use for me, run my hands over the same housing to keep them busy, learned every place the old builders had cut corners 20 years before either of us was posted here. None of that had felt like it was worth anything at the time. It felt like everything now. I brought Section 3 back first, enough to close the gap over the relay itself, and swallowed a scream when a round punched through the housing an arm's length from my head. Then Section 2, my fingers slick with blood that wasn't entirely from the burns, my ears ringing too badly to know if the fire outside had slackened or just moved. I didn't stop to check. Stopping to check was how you got killed doing this work, and I had done this work in worse places than a border garrison at war. By the time the weapons crew finally punched through to me, hauling me back by the collar, because they'd assumed I was already dead, the sky over Halvern Watch had gone hard blue and solid again, and the raiders' skiffs were breaking off against a shield that had no business still standing. I don't remember walking back into the courtyard. I remember Eilith was already there, and that she'd come out from behind the command line to do it, which her own guards clearly hadn't expected either. Her hair had come loose. There was ash on her sleeve. She looked at my hands before she looked at my face, and whatever was in her expression then wasn't composure. It was something closer to a woman recalculating, in real time, every flat sentence she'd ever said about me. Her general, the one who'd laughed the loudest in the receiving hall, was staring too, and it was him who said it first, quiet, like he didn't mean to say it out loud. He held the grid under fire with his hands. That's not a soft-handed toy. That's a man who moved like a fallen star, and nobody thought to notice. I didn't feel like a fallen star. I felt like my hands hurt, and I was tired, and I wanted someone to tell me the trench had held. Eilith didn't say anything for a long moment. Her officers were watching her, the way officers watch a queen deciding how a story gets told from here on. She could have folded the whole morning into a line about the treaty holding, about the border doing its job. That would have been the easy version, and no one would have questioned it. Instead, she crossed the courtyard, in front of all of them, and took my burned hands in both of hers, careful, like she was afraid of adding to the damage. "I called you a soft-handed human toy," she said, loud enough that the whole yard heard it, her voice not flat anymore. "I was wrong about the hands. I was wrong about all of it." She looked past me at her general, at the soldiers still coming up out of the trench, at every person who'd laughed with her that first week. "He is not what the Reach sent us instead of an army. He is my husband. I should have said that a long time ago." Nobody laughed this time. I never got an apology that mattered less to me and meant more to me at the same time. I stood there in the courtyard with my hands wrapped and the shield humming steady overhead, and Eilith stayed beside me instead of retreating back behind the command line where a queen was supposed to stand. Her general, to his credit, was the one who found the medic and pressed a canteen into my ruined hands before anyone thought to offer me a chair, and I drank from it while the yard slowly went back to the business of counting who was still standing. That evening she found me in the relay housing, checking a system that no longer needed checking, out of habit more than need. No court around her this time, no officers watching how the story would be told. "I have spent 3 years deciding what you were," she said, "based on nothing but the shape of your hands, and the fact you never argued with me. I was wrong to decide anything at all without asking." I told her I hadn't argued because there wasn't anything worth arguing with a queen about. She didn't like that answer, and said so plainly, the way she'd once said I repaired pipe fittings. Except this time, there was nothing flat in it. For the first time in 3 years of a marriage, I'd told myself was only ever about a border. I let myself believe it might be about something else too. The grid held for good after that. So, as it turned out, did we.